Hello, lovely people. I'm at the sea for a few days in Sicily to see my family, so got some time to catch up with some communication and computer work. And I thought I'd start from this. I've been talking at different times, but in a very fragmented way, about the idea of supplementing biomass for our horticultural systems and finding an approach which is gradually independent, which makes us gradually independent from outer sources of biomass. This is not very easy at all. So let me just go through a few ideas that I'm just going to go randomly without necessarily a very thought out sequence for these. But they can generate some reflection, hopefully, in all of you who have horticultural systems or just backyard gardens that you want to be productive vegetable wise. So in the UK, we used to import a lot of compost because it was free. We only paid for transport and it was good quality. And we were very local to the place that generated and made the compost. That means that was waste from our local community. So it made a lot of sense to use that compost. Also in the UK, compost being a black and kind of relatively easy to use material, loose and fluffy material, it is great to sow and plant vegetables in, and also to warm the soil, and also to mulch and do all those things that a good mulch should do, which I'm not going to repeat now here. But as we moved to Italy, we knew that we would have to change that, because compost, especially in summer, with its texture and its color, was going to become a problem. Also because compost over here is expensive and hard to find, and very, very, very poor quality. And you might have seen this in previous videos on this channel. So this offered us an opportunity to reflect on how to provide for our own mulch. Now, this is not something you can achieve in a few steps. It does require a lot of thinking, because our systems require a lot of mulch. Ideally, as happens in nature, the ecosystem would supply its own mulch. Now, how do we get there? So the first step is to recognize that hay and straw, like they do in MSP and other systems of no dig, can be a great material to mulch with, because it's got a different texture, it's got a different color, and also it's light to transport. It costs less than compost. In this climate as well, the slugs are a little bit less of an issue, but even with slugs, there are ways to deal with them and still use hay and straw. We have to be extra careful, especially in production environments, but we can do something about it. So our idea is to move towards importing hay and straw, and initially also some dip litter from horse stables. So that would be horse manure with bedding, which can be wood shavings or straw or wood chip. So these materials will replace compost because they're lighter, they're easy to move, and they're less expensive and more readily available in our local area. In time, we want to move away from that. Now, there are different ways. One way is to grow your own hay. So, rent a field or find a place where you can grow your own hay and pay somebody to do the tractor work, and then you get the hay at a much lower price. Also, you have an extra field that you can play with. How can you play with it? Well, you can divide it in 3 sections. I'm going to just throw some ideas out there. And those 3 sections can be dedicated to some grazing. It can be sheep, it can be geese, it can be chickens. And then another section can be growing some extensive crops. I don't know, it can be anything from squash to cabbages to wheat. And then the third area can grow hay, and you can rotate the 3, making sure that you have the animals right before the crop. And also after a crop, if it's a cereal, you get straw from that, and you don't have to worry about removing straw if you're introducing animals afterwards, or you can leave some of the straw on the ground to refeed the soil biology. So this is one way to go. Another way to go is to grow your own mulch within your system, and that can be done in many ways, and they're all very difficult to implement if we're not extremely flexible mentally and planning wise. And so one way could be agroforestry. You have very, very, very dense agroforestry rows and produce a lot of shade, which minimizes oxidation rates of biomass, but also produce a lot of biomass itself. So having biomass rows and the production rows in agroforestry, or have everything together, but that slows down the management, cutting, chopping and dropping of the biomass. Also, you do need 2 to 3 times more space dedicated to biomass than you need to crops. So that means a lot of shade, and in some climates like the UK or other temperate climates, that is not ideal. You need a ton of space. Another option is that of playing with cover crops, crimping them and sowing and planting into them. Um, and so in that case, one can have a mixed approach, growing cover crops in the production beds, but also having permanently cover crop beds for mulch creation. And that also minimizes transport because you have your production beds next to your mulch beds, and some of the time your production beds are your mulch beds. So having a clever rotation of these things avoids having to import anything else than just cover crop seeds and moving a large amount of material around. And yeah, it's ideal because you can control the type and timing of your biomass. So you could rotate that in a system with geese. I'm not going to go into the details of this. I've been studying this, asking to a lot of people who are more, a lot more knowledgeable than me on geese, cover crops, things like that. So stay tuned. There are a lot of ideas out there. I hope I gave you a few pointers, but we can move towards a system that doesn't import any biomass. And I think it is our duty, if we have large enough operations, to show some experimentation and some investigation of this topic, because the problems with dipper mulch no dig system is that we do need a lot of biomass, a lot of mulch, and until we import it from a source which is not sustainable, it is a problem because we're subtracting fertility to other ecosystems. Obviously, if we live close enough to a city and we have waste um, management facilities and we can get good compost from those, well, that's fine because that would be wasted otherwise. But that's not going to be the case for all of us, especially in rural situations. I know the UK is quite blessed in that sense because there's a lot of people making a lot of rubbish, and so there's more compost than in many other places. But if everybody goes no dig, especially larger farms, we're going to need an awful lot of biomass. So compost is not going to be the answer. Compost can still be a good part of our systems, and we can make it on site. There's lots of ways to do that. The wood chip way, tallest organic way. It can be done from lots of other systems. Johnson too. We can make mulching compost. We can make inoculating compost. So that is still a huge part of our spring operation. I would imagine even in the future, because in spring it is beneficial to have a material which has a very loose texture and also a dark color, and that we can sow into carrots and things like that, radishes, a lot easier than hay or any other heavy mulch. So here you go, a few thoughts on mulch and biomass.